Good evening, everybody. Thank you for coming. I'd like to start by saying that I'm incredibly excited to be here, and I'm so happy that you guys could make it, because tonight we're going to be having an awesome public debate with these guys right here. We would like, especially, first, to extend our sincere gratitude to Matthias Hurst, because without him, this event just would not be happening, because this club just couldn't exist. So, thank you. Now, before we get into our public debate tonight, we thought it would be good to talk about exactly what we mean when we say debate and why we think it's important. Now, debate at its core is a simple concept. Two sides argue the various merits of a topic that has been assigned to them while they are constrained by a certain rule set. The sides are then usually judged by a panel to decide a winner. Now, the rules for this debate are simple. Each speaker will have 7 minutes to speak, after which the other side will have the opportunity to ask one question. Both sides will then alternate speakers, beginning with the proposition side, government. After the debate has been concluded, there'll be a short question and answer session, so you guys can interact with them yourselves. The motion for tonight, as you guys all know, is, this house believes that pop feminists and their cults of personality are good for the feminist movement. Now, this is a difficult topic to debate, and there aren't necessarily any right answers. That said, the judges for this debate are going to be you guys. We're going to have a vote after this that Mohvind's going to host. And our goal here is basically to get you guys thinking. People tend to pick most of their opinions without ever really giving it any serious consideration. And this is one thing about debate that I think makes it a great thing to do. It forces you to consider the other opinions and why intelligent, rational people support them. And it makes you do so wholeheartedly because you have to if you want to win. Now, debating doesn't just make you think about the opinions of others, it also makes you think about your own. No issue is black and white, and debate helps us to find that nuance. Now, debate is also good in practical terms. Public speaking is a lifelong leadership skill. Joining a debate club means you get to fly around Europe and go to tournaments. You get to interact with really smart and interesting people, and most of all, it's fun. Finally, and on a more personal note, debate has given me amazing friends across the world, and most importantly, right here at Bard Berlin. And that's who these guys are. I'm going to take just a minute to introduce all of them. On side government, we have Becca and Mohvindh. And on side opposition, we have Farah, Momo, and Tanya. Woo! Now, one last thing. In debate, instead of clapping, we kind of knock like this to applaud. So, with that in mind, let's give a big old debate-style round of applause for our amazing speakers and have an amazing debate.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you, everyone, for coming. We really, really appreciate it. So generally, we do this thing where we just get a read of the audience about what they think. Everyone's dropping their phones. It's great. You don't need it. You just need to listen to us. So throw them out, right? So also abstention. Don't forget that. So I will just ask a simple who is for the motion? Raise your hands. I'll do a count. Who's against and then who's abstaining. And then after the debate, after you heard everyone speak, we shall see how the audience has changed their thoughts and beliefs about it, that sort of thing. Okay, so the motion is this house believes that pop feminists and their cults of personality are good for the feminist movement. Those who are in favor / support this motion, please raise their hands. This is for, so yes, this is for the motion.
That we think yes, pop feminism is good for the
7,
feminist.
8, 9, 10, 11. I'm seeing 11.
12?
11. 1, 2, 3.
Raise your hands really
Raise your hands,
high.
come on. You all had dinner already? 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I was right, 12.
12?
Yes, yes. Okay. Those who are... Really? You're prison style? Wow. Those who are against. So they do not believe that pop feminists are good. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And those who are abstaining? Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Wait, let me raise your hands a bit higher. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, 8.
I'm sorry.
We'll see. All right, very good. Thank you very much for your participation. Just to take note, there's a Q&A session after the entire debate. Oh, yes. Unfortunately, our third speaker could not make it tonight, so I will be going in again. You get to hear me speak twice. Yay. Oh, Lord. So yes, just so you all know. There's supposed to be 3 versus 3, but unfortunately, due to emergencies, third speaker could not make it tonight. Without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister and side government to open up this debate. Here.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very happy to be supporting side government here and get this debate started off as a Prime Minister. And then I will bring some arguments, and then my colleague will come in with some more, and then finally with some more. So what are we talking about here? Basically, in the world today, there's both explicit sexism and implicit sexism. At which point, side government believes that the feminist movement should be spread as widely as possible and be as accessible to as many people as it can be. In this motion, we have 3 terms that I'd like to define. First, we have pop feminists, who are celebrities, people regarded as icons in popular culture, and who espouse feminist values. We're going to be talking mostly about women, but these can also be men. Second, we're talking about cults of personality. A cult of personality arises when a person, through their charisma, media access, and status, creates an idealized, heroic, or otherwise positive image of themselves amongst their followers. A cult of personality is similar to apotheosis, or the elevation to the divine. We can see this sort of behavior towards celebrities, in particular in today's world. Finally, the feminist movement. What do we mean? We mean the feminist movement as the push for feminism, which is defined as the belief that men and women should have equal opportunities. The theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. All right, so our argument. Why do we think that pop feminists and the cult of personality are good for the feminist movement? Well, basically, because they have the reach and the range to contact as many people, many more people than traditional feminists can. What do I mean by reach and range? Because of the media platform and the well-known character of celebrities, they have much more access to contacting people on a day-to-day basis. I have a couple of examples to illustrate this. We can think of Emma Watson as well as Beyonce. In 2014, Emma Watson spoke at the UN. She talked about how everybody should be a feminist. She calls everyone who ever pushes for women to be considered equal to men as inadvertent feminists. By speaking at the UN, and because of her image in the popular culture, she was able to widen the access and widen the viewership of something that is very often an academic platform. We can also think of Beyonce. In 2013, Beyonce published her song Flawless, in which she included the words of the feminist Nigerian novelist Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This video on YouTube has over 77 million views. Through this, both icons, both celebrities, have been able to push the message out further than, we can say, academics or other feminists who work on a more day-to-day or grassroots or even academic level of feminism. Not only do these people have this access, but because they have this incredible following, these cults of personality that they have created through the way they interact with the public. Through this, they have legitimacy in the things they say and command an incredible amount of following. This is also interesting when we think of people like Judith Butler. She's an amazing feminist, but she doesn't command the same sort of following and support as people like Beyonce or Emma Watson. So, why do we care about this for the movement? This brings me to my second point. Popular feminists and their cults of personality are the continuation of the feminist movement. I already told you that there is both explicit and implicit sexism in the world today. Yes, I and all women have access to the same jobs and the same pay as men in the United States and in Germany. Does this mean that I am going to get the same pay? Not necessarily. This is the implicit sexism I'm talking about. Women still have to face the issue that they may not be granted the same pay as their male counterparts, and they may even be discriminated against in an implicit way because their employers are afraid that maybe they will have too much commitment to their family or to one day having children. This is implicit sexism, and this is something that pop feminists can really work against. Of course, they also work against explicit sexism, but so do many other brands. What they do specifically is target the socially constructed idea that women are inferior to men. This is why they are important. This is why they spread the message and are the next wave of feminism. Remember, we as government believe that the feminist movement should be spread as widely as possible, and having pop feminists and their cult of personality as a means to this end can only help the feminist movement be more successful, be more prolific, and get more people involved in the idea of feminism and working on every level to ensure that women are equal to men. Thank you.
We'd like to thank the first speaker of government for her excellent speech and invite the first speaker of the opposition to the floor to open up the case for side opposition. Hear, hear, everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Side Government, for your wonderful speech. So Side Government talked about reach and talked about platform. Reach is great, Rebecca, but what about the message? What message exactly are these pop feminists selling to their cults of personalities? In my speech, I want to bring to you 3 points. I'm going to talk to you about 1, the kind of message these pop feminists are selling, 2, the lack of nuance and intersectionality in these messages, and 3, the impact of this superficiality. Pop culture, and pop icons by extension, run on a demand and a supply curve. Where there's demand for a certain product, service, or statement, there has to be a matching supply. Feminism sells big time, and so pop feminists must be able to match that demand. Invariably, pop feminists stick to the socially acceptable forms of feminism: equal pay, reproductive rights, body image. These are also issues that predominantly pertain to white middle-class women, but this is something I'll tackle later on in my speech. Side Government brings up the issue of pop feminism addressing explicit and implicit forms of sexism, and they use the example of equal pay. Okay, let's talk about equal pay for a second. Who are the celebrities that headline the equal pay movement in Hollywood? You have Jennifer Lawrence, you have Meryl Streep, you have Emma Thompson, you have Rose McGowan, you have Patricia Arquette with her big Oscar speech. These are women that are fighting to close the wage gap between men and women in Hollywood. These are also women that are white. So these women, when these women talk about how women make 80 cents to the dollar, they forget that it's white women that make 80 cents to the dollar. Black women make 60 cents to the dollar, and Latina women make 53 cents to the dollar. Which brings me to my second point about intersectionality and the superficiality of pop feminism. I'm personally yet to hear a celebrity talk about, the objectification of women in the entertainment industry, or the marginalization of women in the LGBTQ community, or the institutional oppression of women of color in Hollywood. And if these issues are addressed, they're inevitably sidelined by some grand Oscar speech about wage inequality. They also represent a beautiful feminism, and one that's predominantly not accessible to women that are not pretty, not thin, not tall. I don't know if you guys remember, but when the female remake of Ghostbusters came out, the actress Leslie Jones was quite heavily body shamed and received quite a lot of racist comments after the movie's release. Women like Amy Schumer, Ashley Graham, Tess Holliday, who headlined the body positivity movement in Hollywood, were deafeningly silent. I don't know, maybe she wasn't pretty enough or she wasn't white enough, I don't know. Because pop feminists represent issues that predominantly concern them, after a point they're unable to engage with issues that are happening on the ground. I'm not denying that these women are not feminists. I actually think they are feminists, but I believe that their feminism lacks depth. This is the exact kind of neoliberal feminism that we on side opposition would like to avoid. We must encourage a stronger feminist message that goes beyond Beyonce at the MTV Awards, like standing in front of big letters that spell out feminist. I think also Pop feminism is feminism of the 1%. At the end of the day, it is feminism of women who shout equality and also write songs about slut shaming and body shaming other women. It's the feminism of privileged women that are allowed to represent whichever form of feminism they choose to. Take Taylor Swift, for example. 2 years ago, when Donald Trump had his presidential campaign, she was infamously quiet. She didn't say anything. This year, for the midterms, she changed her usually apolitical stance and she turned around and said, "Oh my God, you guys go vote." And when people asked her why, she said she suddenly felt differently about it. She's not the only celebrity to suddenly start feeling differently about it.
Yeah, what did you say? I missed the celebrity.
Taylor Swift? Taylor Swift.
Oh, sorry.
Always problematic fave. If you look at women like Katy Perry, you look at women like Kim Kardashian, even Beyonce, these are women who up until 5 years ago had completely denounced feminism because they didn't understand it and they thought it was man-hating and bra-burning, and are now like reclaiming the word suddenly. But let me just go back to the man-hating and bra-burning for a second. That line is used as a justification for not being a feminist by many people that we would now like to call pop feminists. And it's deeply, deeply problematic. For the first point, it assumes that before the Beyoncés and before the Taylor Swifts of the world accepted feminism was just, I don't know, like women running around burning bras like on the street and like screaming out how much they hate men. And this is, of course, fundamentally wrong because it perpetuates the idea that feminism begins and ends with these celebrities. It also reiterates the issue of depth. Because they belong to an industry that at the end of the day sells feminism, it doesn't allow for any sort of radicalism. And let's be honest, the most radical forms of feminism have come from women like Rosa Parks, who as a black woman defied institutional oppression and sat in a place where she didn't belong. Women like Beyonce, after a point, can only push their feminism so far before they hit a barrier. Feminism is going to start demanding more extreme definitions from them. It's going to start demanding radicalism, and they're going to be unable to follow up on that. They end up selling a much tamer version of what's actually a revolutionary movement. In conclusion, we on Side Opposition would like to just say that we do acknowledge that these celebrities and these pop feminists are human beings and they reserve the right to change their minds whenever they choose to. But when, as Side Government is arguing, these celebrities have the kind of fan following and they have the kind of reach that these pop feminists do, it is harmful to the feminist movement. These pop feminists have incredible clout with their cult of personalities, and as public figures, they're responsible for the quality of the message that they are espousing. Thank you, and I'm proud to host.
We'd like to thank the Leader of Opposition for her excellent speech and invite the second member of government to the stand to continue the case for Side Government. Thank you.
Still sliding down. Yes. Yep, that's good. Thank you. Okay. Tanya, thank you for your speech.
Thank you.
All great stuff. Diluted message, quality of message, nuance, intersectionality, the ability for feminist icons or feminists in general to become more radical and spread a stronger message about feminism is lost. Great points. I will deal with them in my points that I'm going to bring up in this debate. The point I'm bringing up for our debate this evening will further expand and ground Rebecca's point on reach and access, and that point is simply plurality and diversity in the context of the global feminist movement. Now, why talk about the global feminist movement? Two simple reasons. One, the world, and thank God for that, is bigger than the West and the United States, right? So, considering our audience here tonight, who's from various countries, I think it's great to hear this, that, we are also included in this feminist movement, right? It needs to be as inclusive as possible. Secondly, considering, again, that this movement is reliant on supporters and subscribers, you need more people on the ground to espouse these sort of ideas and stuff like that, and it's only good to include them in this movement, right? This is where plurality, sorry, I speak so much German these days that it cuts into my English. This is where plurality and diversity comes in. It provides a conduit for expanding the global feminist movement. Now, what do we mean by plurality and diversity? Having and including the unique and individual voices of women of all walks of life, no matter their age, race, religion, nationality, is good for the feminist movement. People like Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, Constance Wu, bless her soul, you guys should watch Crazy Rich Asians, such a great movie. And more international pop icons like Sonam Kapoor, actress in India, Yuna is a famous singer in Malaysia, Siti Nurhaliza is also another famous singer in Malaysia. I hope she doesn't go into acting, but that's a different point. They all have unique inputs to provide to the movement with their narratives, especially their stories on dealing with racism, with dealing with misogyny, and other obstacles that they face in society as women. Now, why is this important? Why is diversity and plurality important? 2 reasons. In many developing countries, quite a few of them, we can say, I think this is a fair thing to say, are still quite patriarchal, right? The feminist ideology and movement is unfortunately not in the mainstream of media, education, politics, etc. It's not a focal point of attention on these ideas. Unfortunate, right? And we can also reasonably go as far as to say that some view it, political rhetorics again, like liberal movements in developing countries, that it is a white Western imperialist phenomena. Unfortunately, a lot the sort of feminists that side opposition supports are unfortunately predominantly white and Western, right? And we cannot avoid this. So this hinders the capacity of the feminist movement to have people to subscribe to it and call themselves a feminist. Think about it. How can we expect people to understand and accept ideas that are more nuanced, radical, and deeper when they have not formally or consciously subscribed to being a feminist? I cannot think about these ideas, think about them more deeply and engage with them if I'm not a feminist. And this is the whole point of pop feminist icons, right? Secondly, having a woman/feminist icon to be able to relate to. I think people like Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, sort of expanding the kinds of feminist icons who have different stories to tell can allow people to relate to them in so many different levels. And this allows for more plurality within the movement. Maybe feminist ideology can be expressed in different ways, and this allows more people to be co-opted into the movement, which is very, very good. So how do we achieve this? 2 things. First is leverage. Second is the medium in which pop feminist icons use. Firstly, on leverage. So besides the reach, we'll bite the bullet and say, yes, pop feminist icons that we've mentioned are now, Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, they are Western as well. So you can come back at me and say, like, oh, Mohvindh, pop feminist icons are also predominantly Western. How do you deal with that? This is the point of where leverage comes in. Local feminists, like local icons, be it actresses, singers, and stuff like that, within similar industries can leverage off these icons as well. Great thing about the internet these days, Twitter and stuff like that, to be able to sort of co-opt some of these ideas into their platform as well. Again, this deals with the problematic narrative of feminist movement being white and Western, and this also allows for more contextualized and specific current narratives from these local pop feminists that not only further expands the reach, that like what Rebecca talks about, but grounds it in the local context. And I'll talk about a couple of examples very quickly after this, right? So secondly, medium. Songs, music, movies, interviews, talk shows, all those kinds of things. An example that Rebecca brings up is a super pertinent example because Beyonce's song, Flawless, she catapulted Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's words into the spotlight. A lot of people didn't know about her once she's on Beyonce's platform, i.e. through her song and stuff like that. People start to consider, oh, who is this person? Let's read about her more and find out, and then get catapulted into like the feminist ideology and engage in more deeper, unique ideas and stuff like that, right? So this is one example of just how good pop feminist icons are in general, but also the example of leveraging how even a feminist icon on their side of the house can leverage pop feminist icons on our side of the house. So clearly, clear impacts. 2 more impacts. The point of that Rebecca brings up is dealing with more implicit obstacles that women face and the social societal mindset that perpetuates it, right? We have to acknowledge that a lot of these things are unfortunately cultural. It's in the societal psyche, and it's very more of a issue that is very implicit. For example, an example that comes to mind is the Me Too movement, right? It started predominantly in the West, North America, and now it's caught on fire all across the globe. India has just recently, bless you.
Thank you.
India has recently co-opted into this idea, and now it's dealing with a really big issue in India, which is like rape culture, and it's a really big thing. We can all agree that dealing with these sort of like implicit things that are more less structural and more implicit and within like the psyche of society is a really good thing. Secondly, introduces, like I said, with the example of Beyonce's song, introduces people to feminist ideas and allows people to subscribe to it in the first place and then be on board and open to be included in these sort of deeper, engaging, and interesting ideas within the feminist movement. So yes, from side government, you have three things coming out right now. Reach, access, platform, and my point, plurality and diversity. With that, we're very, very proud to propose.
We'd like to thank the second speaker for side government for his excellent speech, and we'd like to invite the second speaker for opposition to the stand to continue this case for side opposition. Hear, hear, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. It is great to be with you here today. And first of all, I would like to thank the PRD team for organizing this event, especially when one considers the cold evening, which everyone could have spent better. Now, before starting this debate, I think it's important that we kind of take a step back and have a look at the resolution that is at debate. If this debate were to take place in maybe 50 years ago or 60 years ago, I might have been arguing on the other side of the debate. The reason for it is we back then had a society and a world in which great figures and great people were the defining people, and they were the role models of that era. These were the people to whom endeavors were ascribed, and for their achievements and the progress that we have made, they were all concentrated and surrounded around one person. But today, we live in a different world. We live in a world in which our influencers, our figures and role models aren't the ones necessarily brought up and hyped up by Hollywood or by the movie industry. These are the ones that can actually be available and spread their message across to hundreds, if not millions of people at the tip of their fingers with the use of social media. These are Instagram, Facebook, etc., you know them. Now, looking at this resolution, we have to look at what is at stake and what is the message and what we are trying to get out of this debate. What we are arguing for, and I'm sure that the opposing side wouldn't disagree with, is how do we promote the idea of feminism across the globe and make it be able to penetrate into the minds of every single individual. And under feminism, we all understand, thank you, that we would like to have empowered individuals, empowered women, and people who actually can make their own decisions and self-determine what path they would like to do when they grow up. And looking at the way this culture and this system currently is in place, I tend to say that this system does not work and it has failed us. So in a way, right now, it is not me kind of going after the pop feminists per se. I will not mention many examples because pop feminists, as it already is known by everyone. Otherwise, they wouldn't be pop feminists. And it is me trying to attack this idea of cult of personality that right now I'm trying to propose. Now, if we look at pop culture and its products, we will see that the impetuous and the driving force behind it is not so much the message of feminism, but it is rather fame and money, power, that is actually the main driver behind the products. So in that sense, it is no longer a matter of, are we talking about in Hollywood, us talking about feminism and its message being promoted, or whether it is us talking against racism through this media. It is actually the entire system that is actually faulty and we need to have a replacement for. And in that sense, when one looks at the issue of feminism in that regard, in Hollywood, in music, in education, as you mentioned, it is much rather the supply and demand that is actually the driving force. So if today feminism is trendy, perfect, we will go and hop on that train. But what if tomorrow that train of feminism is no longer attractive? That very same Beyonce or other celebrities you're talking about will actually, or have to actually, go against it. And in that sense, it is not me attacking Beyonce or the divine figures, which you actually mentioned, and our role models that I'm going after. It is their agency. So that position of power given to that person, that politician who actually stands up and then has to face up to lobbyists, that feminist pop star who actually is kind of forced to actually abide by the rules of the industry, that actually is my problem. Just as an example to enlighten you, for example, when it came to the Me Too movement and the feminist, let's say, wave or momentum that was actually joined by it. There was this big debate that everyone should be wearing black dresses, and how a couture company, the tailor, actually complained that this actually goes against our interest to produce for you these very expensive, not for everyone affordable clothing. And that this goes against our interest, that's why we will actually stop with that movement. And that's how the gala actually, instead of everyone wearing black dresses, ended up with everyone wearing their own, and the outlash and outrage that it caused. Another example, to give you, to enlighten what I'm trying to talk about, is that this idea isn't me, again, going after the feminist argument per se. It is me talking about how we should dismantle this system because of the message we are spreading across generations and generations. The concentration of powers in the hands of a select few, and all of us are humans and all of us are eerie. All of us make mistakes, is much more magnified and puts us under the lens when we are actually the only ones who are that select few. Whereas if this were to be decentralized, and not by the usual vertical way, but actually in a horizontal sense, would actually lift off that burden and give agency to every single individual. This is the message that we want, and this is how women should actually be. And lastly, as my last argument, and this goes actually alongside the argument that was brought up in terms of international on the global scale, is that the very message that the likes of Beyonce send across other nations and other countries is not necessarily reflective of the situation those countries are actually facing. So if today Me Too was brought up, that doesn't necessarily target the problems and burdens women are facing in India when it comes to issues of virginity and the stigma attached to it. Now, as an example, I can mention to you the case of Tamila Nadu, a 13-year-old Indian girl whose head was chopped off just because she had rejected the advances of a man from the upper caste. This message will have never gotten across were it not to be by that local influencer, without any leads or without any hierarchy of demands being given to her or him by a like of Beyonce. This was done because of her certain will and her certain wish to actually publicize the issue and bring it to the attention of other people. And in that sense, finally, what we have to go against is this idea of hierarchy that destroys the many lives and destroys or neglects the many issues that are not only a problem only for women in the feminist case, but also in the racial case and other arguments. Thank you very much.
We'd like to thank the second speaker for opposition for his excellent speech and invite once more Mohvindh up to the stage to give his final speech for side government and close out the government case as a whole. Hear, hear, everybody.
Hello again. Hope you guys are not bored of me at this point. I'll do my best. Okay. Right. I'll start off by talking about some of the points that Mohvind's brought up, right? Marketplace, capitalism. Yeah, we get it. Sure, we're the bad guys here. We'll take it. But one thing that we don't realize is when we put these pop feminist icons into the marketplace, so to speak, we also put them at our disposal. He is right to say that there's this lens, right? It's true. Therefore, we put them to the forces of the market at our liking, the people. We engage with them and we hold them accountable. So people are allowed to obviously find out about Beyonce, find about the nuance of these people. Whilst Rebecca may define the term cult of personality as like the divine and things like that, they are at the end of the day human beings as well. They make mistakes. They are infallible, non-infallible, infallible. Therefore, we can hold them non-infallible. Therefore, we hold them accountable and put them under our lens. We get to decide which sort of feminist movement, which sort of feminist ideologies that we want, and we take away the ones that we don't. Right, that's Julian Momo's point. Now, I'll wrap up this debate on side closing government. Sorry, some side government. What has this debate been about? This debate has been about the feminist movement. In the context of the 21st century, we have to remember this, right? We've come a long way, and we've arrived to this point where some people are almost calling it like the fourth wave of feminism, right? 3 things that come out from side government: platform and reach, plurality and diversity, which then engages with people of all backgrounds and walks of life. I'd like to just mention a quote said by Andy Ziesler. Whether or not we like to admit it, pop culture is a lens through which we alternatively view and shape the world around us. When it comes to feminism, pop culture aids us in translating feminist philosophies, issues, and concepts into everyday language, making them relevant and relatable. Reach and platform, plurality and diversity, more people are co-opted into the feminist movement. They are willing to, they feel validated by seeing women of, that represent them in many different ways by this movement being open and inclusive. We expand our reach and we have as many people into this movement as possible. We want to make, I think I've heard the quote, like, we want to make the idea of like saying I'm a feminist redundant. This is the goal at the end of the day, that people just straight up, this is status quo, everyone is equal, gender equality is a thing, done. This is the goal. Let me talk about some extra impacts also. Spillover effects, right? Young girls / young women from various walks of life, again, through these pop feminist icons, we can agree they're mostly their fan base and stuff like that. So they're on their platform and have the avenue to feel empowered, take action in their communities, question social norms and things like that, and frankly just be awesome people in general. And I think one other group that we've actually forgotten about this debate is like young boys and young men and how this sort of impacts them in this world. I think we can all agree that the spillover effects that young women of various walks of life face then are feel empowered to then question their community and stuff has a spillover effect on young boys. I'm proud to say and stand here and say that like I am the person I am today because of my elder sister. I think she has defined and very much set the standard for all of myself and my younger brothers to how we deal with these sort of issues and how we stand in society with regards to like people and equality and especially women as well. So hats off to my sister. And this is just a prime example of people who have been impacted in a way and the spillover effects that we get on our side of the house. So to wrap up, I want to talk for longer than I need to. Yes, there is some dilution in the message. Yes, we can't be as radical. Yes, we can't be as nuanced. We agree, we take all of this, we bite the bullet, and we say, screw it, we want reach. We want to get as many people on board in this movement as possible from all walks of life, women, men, young boys, young women, all these people, to be able to say that I'm a feminist, and hopefully the goal is once this is all done to not to need to say that I'm a feminist, to just have this status quo as much as possible, and have this be the status quo and just a standard that which we all start with. With that, very, very proud to propose.
We'd like to thank Mohvindh for coming up here once again and giving another amazing speech, and we'd like to invite the final speaker of opposition to the stand to close out the case for side government or for side opposition and for the debate as a whole. Hear, hear, everybody.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm here to conclude what we believe this debate is about. And it goes like this. So what they present to us is a case of reach, and nothing but reach. What we present to you is that what actually gets to be reached, we should question that. So they say reach regardless, reach it doesn't matter. We say the who, what, where, when, why, and how of reach matters very much. And this is why. Now, Tanya has presented to you a case about the feminism of the 1% that causes this false feminism to be created in Hollywood, and that has to be presented to us with a pretty face, right? This artificiality for us is fine, but the danger comes is that these people have cults of personality and so much power that can sway you back and forth just like that because you like their music and you like their books. Their movies, not books. So that's exactly the point. So from there, and also this goes into the case of local pop feminists that they say the movement is going to inspire in developing countries, whereas the local pop feminists of these countries are already considered westernized, and the people who are not local pop feminists who are within this developing country, they are also who listen to Hollywood, the people who speak English. There are certain 1% of these layers of these developing countries in the first place. So this has nothing to do with our case at all. Now Momo comes after and presents to you a case of the cash that makes Hollywood, right? The nature of the job that limits this feminism and makes it subject to the capitalist order, as things naturally are. So from there, we would like to reach the impact of all this. The impact that I present to you is the devaluation of the movement. Why? You have a case of overcrowding or overshadowing of feminism by celebrity conflict, drama, and dress that shed the light from the actual cause. So it's as if feminism is part of some sort of celebrity movement, not the other way around. Hollywood co-opts feminism so that it becomes not about the system that people are trying to fight for, but about them, the individuals, and their problems. Why? Because what you get on the media is a case about how Nicki Minaj fought Taylor Swift over the MTV Awards. You get a case about Annie Lennox criticizing Beyonce's hyper-femininity message. And so they tell us, reach and range. Yes, yes. But this reach and range is about this drama, these soap operas. It has nothing to do with what's happening on the ground. So this drama is suddenly created, and that's fine. And then the worst of all is that this is over not actions, causes, actual impact, these conflicts between them, but mere defining of the word during some premiere, during some Oscar speech, during some interview for a movie. And this is what we get for all their reach. So then what happens? You have a case in which pop feminism cannot coexist. It replaces and overcrowds grassroots feminism, academic feminism, and other spheres of influence. You no longer care about Simone de Beauvoir. You no longer care about Judith Butler, about Margaret Atwood. You just get all these drama and these conflicts. Now what they tell us is as follows. They tell us, oh, but the song Flawless, it's going to make people read. This is what we get from them. But we say, no, this is not what happens. We say that there's a problem in that we live in a world in which at the end of the day, 150 characters of one tweet matters more than the shortest book. Then you will not have these celebrities create a medium to some intellectual inspiration. You will not have people listening to Flawless and going to read Chimamanda afterwards. This is not what happens. People care about the tweets, the drama, the articles, the media, the Hollywood celebrity movement, and they don't care about the actual cause anymore. And this is the reach that ends up happening. And for this, we are very proud to oppose. Thank you.
So we'd like to thank the final speaker of the opposition for her excellent speech, and just thank everybody for this amazing debate. Let's just give one more round of applause. So what comes now is the question and answer session. There are no stupid questions. Here's basically how it's going to go. If you guys are curious about anything or want to just have a discussion about something or are interested in something, raise your hand and propose a question to either side, government or opposition. Huh? Ooh, do we want to vote first or do we want to do questions first, guys?
Questions.
Questions?
Okay, fine.
Interesting. Okay, well, we'll do questions
People
first.
decide.
So, Just propose to either government or opposition, and then one of them will come up and answer the
It's
question.
not a question. Maybe we can vote now, and then after question and discussion, we can vote.
I agree.
I agree as well.
Triple
Because
vote?
otherwise the vote will also be on our Q&A.
That does make a lot of sense. Okay, let's do that. I'm gonna have to raise the tally mark.
No, just do one. We need to
Yeah,
compare.
but we can just type the, we can write the regular number.
Okay.
It's okay to write 12.
Is it okay to write 12 now, Jack?
Oh, my eye.
That's even. Do you remember everything?
Yeah, that's 12.
Oh, to go.
Ah, okay.
Yes.
It's so useful because you can just count. Okay, so who's for now?
Wait. Hands on, hands on. Let me do this. Okay, there's some sound. Who is for the motion?
Hands high up.
All
Yes.
the way up.
All the way
up.
Okay. 1, 2. One more time. 9.
9.
Okay, who is against? Ooh, no. 1, 2. Hands up higher, please. One more time. 13.
13.
Those who are abstaining. Yeah, 4. All right, pretty clear. Change in audience. Opposition, you take this round. Very good. All right, now we open the floor for a Q&A. Let's discuss this topic in detail. Oh, I should say.
Yeah, I saw that hand up first.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wait, I shouldn't stand here actually. Where should
How
I?
about you go first? And then
Yeah.
I'll go after.
Okay, that's for you guys. How did you actually, what is your first memory of feminism? Did you like encounter academic feminism before knowing it from pop culture?
That's a good question.
I can take that. Do I have to get up there? Can I just
No, let's just talk. This is a discussion, so yeah, it's fine.
I encountered maternal feminism first. I think my mom was like obviously my first feminist encounter, and which is why I think like ever since then every celebrity message I've seen has always been diluted in comparison, and so it's really just been not a comparison for me.
Do you want every member to answer? Or not just one?
Actually, maybe for everyone.
No, I actually don't keep up with the articles. No, for real. I wish I did, but I don't. I don't know why.
My turn.
We can
Yeah.
say it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think for me, like, it would be my sister and my mom also. The same thing as well.
I mean, I do read up a lot on pop culture, but I would say I've never had the feeling that since this person says feminism is great, I didn't have that encounter or that feeling. The first time I would say was ever since I came to BAR. And this is not an advertisement for the college.
And like Farah, I don't really keep up with pop culture, so definitely from both of my parents and just the context I was raised in.
All right. Anyone other questions? Elena.
Well, mine, I'm sorry to be that asshole who's like, mine is more of a comment than a question, but
Yeah, sure. Let's hear it.
side opposition really like convinced me further that I like oppose this because I see a lot of the points on your guys' side
Yeah.
because I do think that there is like a sort of outreach thing that happens with pop feminism, and that's not necessarily bad, but especially the way that Tanya phrased it, that this is the feminism of the 1%. I think it also creates a narrative that like we're gonna be saved by the 1%, and we're not. And I think we need to talk about capitalism. And yeah, it's shocking I'm talking about capitalism, but especially like what Tanya was mentioning with these celebrities who are already millionaires talking about wage equality. Wage equality is not as simple as the discrimination against women. It's a much more structural concept, and especially when we look at the system of global capitalism that we live in right now, women in the developing world are getting paid way less than women in the US. And yes, we can talk about like these racial discrepancies in the US, but at the end of the day, like we get our clothing made in Bangladesh, for example. And I remember there was this like picture going around of like a woman in Bangladesh or like one of these sweatshops making a t-shirt that says like I'm a feminist. And if we don't tackle these issues on the structural level, like how can we bring like economic equality to these women and men in the developing world, then I don't see the point of this 1% feminism. Like sure, maybe our boyfriends are gonna be nicer to us and once in a while they'll cook, but that's ultimately not the change that we need to be looking for. So yeah, I don't know, side opposition had it, but I think you should have like maybe talked about like global capitalism a little bit more, but in general, like I think I side with you.
Actually, there was a reason why we decided not to bring the capitalism argument, because we thought when we bring it on capitalism level, their way of answering it would be arguments in favor of capitalism, so it would have kind of been diverging from the main topic. But you're totally on point, like when you said it, like we totally had these arguments and points like discussed, but we just thought if we kind of delve into capitalism, arguments against it, they're gonna come up, so it's gonna be an ideological battle on is capitalism good or is communism better, or is capitalism good, what were the alternatives?
I see. No, because I think that you guys were touching upon like how feminism is commodified as well nowadays, that it's just another product that's being sold to you on the market, and like I am not of the belief that the free market is gonna solve structural oppression, because it's clearly been proven that that's not the case. And like, yeah. Anyway, good job on your side.
Thank you. Any other comments? By the way, you're allowed to respond to each other. Like this is a discussion inclusive of everyone. So yes, go ahead. Yep.
First of all, thanks guys for the interesting debate. And my question is probably for the opposition, but I mean anybody is free to answer. Can you think of some more examples, as you guys mentioned that the pop stars, feminists, sort of just piggyback on the current issue and like propagate their ideas based on that. Can you illustrate your point with one more example? Anyone for that matter?
What?
With as in what could be another issue that they've or have you seen this sort of a trend that has been happening?
Yeah, so what we were trying to present is that maybe they want to go further than this in their interviews or in their research, but they can't because the nature of the industry constrains them. Why? So they can talk about feminism, but for example, they still have to have a diet and have Botox before they come out on the Oscars and wear $1 million dresses and all the rest. So there are certain things that would hurt their business that they can't touch upon.
Okay.
So
I think we were also like trying to talk about how like the moment like these issues trend, it's like they flock to those issues. Not to say that they don't believe in it, but I think, and I didn't really like expand, but I think like Meryl Streep's whole speech at the Oscars about oh my God, Donald Trump and this and that, but it's not denied that structural oppression against women hasn't existed before Trump, right? And it's just now that it's socially acceptable to bring out these messages, and there's clearly a popular movement against Trump that she feels comfortable, and the industry feels comfortable sending her publicly to make this message, right? She didn't do this 5 years ago. She didn't do this even 2 years ago. That's, I guess, kind of where we were going with that.
Yeah. Okay, so first of all, great job, everyone. This was a really great debate. I would like to bring up the point that any publicity could be good. So that's the point I was thinking about the whole time. But then on the other hand, I was wondering if either side would like to answer if this pop feminist movement could be harmful to feminism in any way, and if so, do you think it's worth it? I know you have to side with either side, but just personally.
No, we can answer personally.
Oh, okay.
I think.
You mean personally?
Personally.
I mean, I have to say, I think that on one hand, I do agree that getting this message to as many people as possible is a good thing, but I definitely think there's a huge danger in giving a few people who are very much constrained by the work they do, by the image they have, by the followers that they have, in following sort of, it's not a party line obviously, but following the speech that they're supposed to do. It can be, I really think it can be detrimental that at a certain point they will be cherry picking the issues that are of concern. I mean, I think we can think about it recently as well. I mean, I think the Me Too movement and everything that has come after it with the talk about sexual harassment is really, really important. But I mean, we've just seen that come up right now. This is not an issue of just right now, it's always been an issue, but sort of as it came into the popular culture, that's when celebrities started speaking up about it. And so I think that does show that there can be some danger in having these people as the mouthpieces of feminism.
Yeah, I think in regards to when it gets global, I think to some extent, when you have Hollywood representing it, it propagates further the idea that feminism is Western, not makes it less. So it makes it less accessible in a way.
Now, when we talked about entertainment, but then since I'm more into politics and American politics in particular, the best example I think which kind of shows whether this publicity can be good and or interpreted as bad would be Hillary Clinton, and then tracking the development from the 90s to the most recent elections we had. And then there you see her, I would say, evolution, or revolution if you want to call it, from this woman who stands always by the side of her husband and always is there for her, and the way she dresses, to this woman who shatters glasses. I don't know if you watched the DMC videos of how she broke the glasses and this glass ceiling was broken, that a woman finally made it on stage. So on one side you would say, well, why is this woman kind of constrained by society to dress this way and act this way? Also in public debates, so if I were to be a strategist for her campaign, I would totally do what I would say a pop feminist promoter would do, which is she was instructed not to raise the decibels of her voice by a certain amount, just because if a woman actually gets angry, this actually turns off voters. And we actually, here you can also see, we have set up our institutions in such a way that everyone kind of crowds out or goes inside and says, oh, okay, she actually has that mentality, I'll go for it, or not. So if you want Hillary Clinton and a woman to win, on the one side you have to make this calculation. Do I want to promote this culture or do I not want to? And in that case, the interpretation and the answers would be different.
I also personally think a huge issue for me about pop feminists is the massive sexualization that most of these celebrities do propagate. And that's not to say that a woman can't use her sexuality as a way to empowerment, but I think it's sort of personally a bit of a trend that it's like overly done. Like even we saw with, what was it, with the Superwoman with Gal Gadot, she's like this really amazing woman, and finally there's a Hollywood film with a female superhero, and yet she's dressed in this incredibly like over-sexualized costume. So I mean, I think personally for me that's a danger, that it may get to a point where that is the main avenue that pop feminists use to spread the movement, is sort of the sexualization of the female body for empowerment.
I think sorry.
Finish your statement.
Sorry, just quickly.
And then we'll go to Matthias,
I
because he has
think
his hand.
like one of the reasons also why we were against it is that you have like people like Cardi B and like Kim Kardashian who have huge cult followings, and who are feminists now that like it's socially acceptable to say so. But they also promote like appetite suppressants on their Instagrams, which I personally think is also very like anti-feminist of them. Like you're encouraging young teenage girls who predominantly make up their fan following to look to like appetite suppressant lollipops and like fit teas and like whatever, instead of promoting like being okay with your body and not promoting eating disorders, you know.
Like just final note, and then Matthias will get to you. Like I think these are all fair points and like valid as well, but I think we have to acknowledge that when it comes to getting to the more nuanced stuff on like feminism ideology, into like academia and stuff like that, there is a sense of privilege there. And one that, whilst you may say that pop feminists, yes, they were the 1%, but then doing all these other like sophisticated nuance like feminists, like studying feminism and stuff like that, there is a sense of privilege there that we as liberal arts students in Berlin, Germany, get to have access to, and really read and talk about it in class and stuff like that, in our little bubble, that sort of thing, that other people don't have. And we still have this problem of like people not subscribing to feminism, right? Like I think there's a range of people who are like, I'm a feminist, but do I want to say it? Oh, what is feminism? Like we have to acknowledge that there are actually people who are like still, this as a concept, this is a movement, to like, it's difficult for them to like comprehend. Unfortunately, that this is the case, and I think there is still some grounds for pop feminism to be allowed to have like their voice and use their platform. Heck, you know, like let Judith Butler use these platforms and stuff like that. Like I think there's a way to effectively use this to propagate feminist movements and ideologies on their side, on the opposition side. So, Matthias.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, the very last speech was very powerful, strong, passionate, almost convinced me. And I do agree, of course, that we should change the system somehow. I mean, capitalism, of course, but that's not the topic here, right? So I think
That's not the topic.
we should, of course, go to the very basic and change these structures in order to really have some progress here. I totally agree with that. But since the question, the discourse was within our given structures, right? So I argue within the given structure. I don't like the given structures. I don't hate them, but I don't. Some of them, yes. But so I try to stay within the structures because that's what we have. And within these structures, I do believe that reach really is important. That I see, of course, that there's, I wouldn't use the word danger. I mean, if you see that celebrities speak about feminism, Me Too, at the moment when it becomes en vogue, that might be revealing in terms of how weak they are, how much they are part of the structure. I wouldn't call it a danger, that this is dangerous. Why should this be dangerous? They're just talking what everybody else is talking about, right? So I wouldn't see a danger here, but if there are 1 million people who listen to a song by Beyonce or watching a movie about this or that, and from these million people, 2 or 3 would then have a greater interest, that's something. I totally agree we are living in a bubble, and when we talk about this 1%, or what was the term exactly, that get something from a celebrity and cult of personality, then of course we have to see, we have to recognize and acknowledge that what we have here, our little academic bubble, this is 0.3 or 0.03%. I mean, come on, let's be realistic. Much more people listen to a song, watch a movie than read Judith Butler. I mean, I rather watch a movie and listen to a song than read Judith Butler because it's so sometimes very abstract, very complicated. And again, don't get me wrong, I see your points, but in the given system, I still do think that there's much more to gain than to lose from people, celebrities speaking up, even if we see them just as part of the system. I've never heard about one last thing and then a question. Maybe I'm the wrong generation because I'm not on Facebook, Twitter. I guess I've never heard, maybe I've heard the song that was mentioned several times here by Beyonce, but I wasn't aware of that. Some of the names you mentioned, I've heard, but I'm not really engaging in that. But I'm part of a generation that started slowly to believe that maybe there is something to popular culture, and here I talk about songs, movies, /films, and I have a feeling you're a bit kind of very negative about movies. You get my point, right? Of course, some of the stuff is bullshit, but it makes people sometimes think about something. Not everybody, but some, and that's something. My question, I never heard about the case about the girl, 13-year-old girl in India that was beheaded for terrible. What do you think? Would it harm the cause if they would make a movie about it, or Beyonce would compose a song about this to spread the news?
Sorry, can I take this one?
Please.
Yes. So we introduced that example in the context of the fact that that issue received no light because it was overshadowed by a fake Me Too allegation that came out by a local celebrity in the state. And I guess where we're going with that was that it's not about like the fact that that incident needs to be popularized. It's that the popularization of other instances are overriding like actual on-the-ground issues. Like the on-the-ground issues in India, when we in India talk about like intersectional feminism, we don't talk about maybe race is less and caste is more, right? We want like caste acknowledgement. And so this is the intersectionality that we're addressing in America, and I guess that in India. And I think it also begs the question, like, if your feminism is not for everyone, then who is it for, right? And if it's not addressing the issues of a lower caste girl who, it's a very deep institutional, structural, and like Mohvindh said, like in people's psyche, it's an issue that's deeply penetrated. If it's not addressing those issues, then how are we really fixing the problem? And it's often overridden by issues that I think celebrities tend to co-opt from the West, and they believe that because it's being spoken about in the West, it now needs to be spoken about in India. I'm not in any sense deriding the Me Too movement in India. I think it was extremely important and it was about time. But I think also there's a, and this is also partially media's fault, that there's a disproportionate attention that's now given to that and taken away from feminists that have been working on the ground to actually battle institutional issues. And you can talk about any country that's not a Western country in this case. But that's kind of where we were coming from.
So in the end, I don't care about Western feminism, or I mean, feminism should be feminism, right? I mean, saying this is Western feminism and thus maybe it's, this is also some kind of a, I don't know, racist attitude. But again, I ask, if Hollywood would make a film about the girl, if Hollywood would that harm the cause, or couldn't this help that more people in the Western world would learn about this and think, oh my God, what's going on in that country? Why are they doing this? And just shed some light, make it more popular.
From what you said, I got the impression that you kind of think that this site kind of opposes all mediums that are kind of used. So in terms of media, you can say music, movies, etc. This is not the point, just to clarify.
I heard at some point, people making films, not books.
I mean, directing movies, this is no problem, but then...
But it's different, in the sense that there's a difference between an actress making a movie representing, say, Judith Butler, and then people liking the actress because they identify with the character role, then this actress presenting herself. That's a different issue. I think when someone like Beyonce comes up, she doesn't say, I want to represent Chimamanda because she did this and that and she wrote this book and this, that. She says, no, I am the feminist. That's different from them having a character play in a movie. So, and when we meant to say movies and music, we meant to say movies and music that have nothing to do with feminism. That is part of their job, say their movie industry or their general like Hollywood industry, that they take feminism as a complement to it, to their job. So we didn't mean it in the sense of movies versus intellectual,
Okay. Since we have talked about, we have included the topic of Western feminism, I want to talk a little bit about China. Maybe I'm fundamentally biased, but today, everybody, the kids, 6-year-old kids in kindergarten, can have the access to all of the world as long as they have the cell phone or tablet or laptop. But the thing is, that's not the case for China. From a primary school to middle school to high school, 99% of my classmates, they don't know what feminism is, and they believe that the woman shouldn't be doctor, and still there are 99% of media in China. They laugh at female doctors because they're hard to get married, because they usually seek to find a smarter husband defined by the social structure. But the thing is, what those Chinese people can have the access to are pop cultures, Beyonce, movies. They just suppose before high school, before all the high technology tablets come out to our viewpoint, what it is the media that send the message of feminism to those Chinese people? None. But pop culture brought up the idea that to those some of the developing countries, especially for those who requires citizens to use VPN to connect to Facebook, Instagram, and etc. So, if not the pop cultures, who are the people who brings that idea to the people people in those countries. And I have a question. If we do not have pop cultures, pop feminists, would the feminism situation in today's world actually be better? And also, enough about China. Just a little point about America. I believe some of you might have heard of the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and so-called RBG. A lot of people give her a nickname, Notorious RBG. Well, that's from part of pop culture, and in fact, a lot of the wage equality and a lot of job opportunities for women are supported, are possible because of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And today we have Notorious RBG, and to make it pop culture to reach more people, and we have more access to people like RBG, and then inspire us, inspire more people. I think, isn't that part of pop feminism?
We will take one final comment / point / question. Ricardo. Hi. Oh, wait. Sorry.
Questions.
Was it a rhetorical
We have an
question or a
answer.
question?
Oh, I just have a
Would
question.
you like this?
If we don't have pop feminism,
So you want us to answer this, right? Or no, you don't want us to answer.
I kind of want.
Okay.
Okay. So if the
I'm so sorry.
situation, the feminism situation in today's world
Yeah.
actually be better.
So we're not saying that like we said, I think pop feminists and pop culture icons, like they do have their own opinions, and we of course acknowledge that. But if you ask your average citizen in India, you ask your average citizen in China who RBG is, do you think they would really know that? And I think you have the privileged access to pop culture icons like RBG, who we absolutely support.
Isn't RPG, well, without giving her the nickname Notorious RBG, the icon for the so-called real feminism that you have talked about?
That could
By
be, but her reach is not as much as like a Beyonce or
Yeah,
a,
of course, but because
we're basically addressing the issue that pop
she
feminists-
stands for the real feminism, and thus before we give her the name Notorious RBG, even today, we know Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Suppose she stands for real feminism. Those who gain access to her, the real feminism, they usually accept higher educations. They have more access to, especially people in developing countries, they have more access to the stuff. They're usually in a higher position in hierarchical structure in a society. Isn't that the so-called the real feminism?
What we're saying is that pop
for-
culture, pop feminists need to be more responsible with the message that they're sending. I think that's why we talked about intersectionality and nuance, is that we acknowledge the reach that pop feminists have. We're not saying that they don't have this reach or that they shouldn't use this reach. We're saying that they need to be more responsible with this kind of reach. And the kind of reach the way they're using it right now is irresponsible in our opinion. We are partially arguing that they need to be more careful with the kind of message that they're talking about. We're not in any way against it. But yeah.
So is there really a clear differentiation between pop feminism, substantiality of feminism that they stand for?
Yeah,
and
because there's a
the
difference
other-
between an RBG and a Beyonce. It's a very clear difference, and I think like arguing that is.
So do you think they can transform? Do you think they can ever be intermediate?
The moment they be a little more radical than they currently are, sure. And they stop selling appetizer presents on their Instagram, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Last question, point, Ricardo. Go.
Okay, so I just kind of wanted to reflect on the conversation that we've had a little bit and point out some things that I think perhaps are getting a little bit lost. One thing is this house believes that cults of personality, those feminists, are good for the feminist movement. A lot of times we here in the audience have asked you guys outside opposition, like what you see about this, and you continually say that like, oh no, this can be good for it. We just don't think it's as good. But that's not really the motion here, right? It's whether they are good, period. So the gray area is not really part of the discussion. I think as far as the movement is concerned. Otherwise, I think you guys are totally, like, it's all valid. The next thing would be that we're talking about cults of personality here, at which point I would say that both the example given by said opposition in Hillary Clinton is kind of on the sidelines, because I don't think she qualifies as a cult of personality. I don't think people venerate her in the same way. And I think cults of personality imply a certain amount of blindness or blind faith to these individuals saying, you know, whether it be that I relate with them or that I think they're just cool, I follow what they do, not really questioning perhaps ulterior motives. In that same way, I would think that RBG doesn't really qualify for that either. And then lastly, I would like to point out that we're talking about for the feminist movement. And I think the movement is more than just the ideas and thoughts provided. It is also the communication of those thoughts to the general public in order to meaningfully shape society. And while I do agree that the academic and the more intersectional and precise thoughts and comments and, you know, normative suggestions that are created on that side are important, it is the fundamentals that are currently being communicated that have to lay the groundwork for those specificities to then later actually arrive to the general populace. So if pop feminists lay the groundwork now, then perhaps some pop feminists in the future can start talking about these specifics.